Professor Boyd Joyce.
Thank you so much, Walter. As you know, I really enjoy interacting with the Humanities Center. I respect the work you do, and I declare here publicly that I've learned a lot from these brown bag presentations. I believe my colleague Lisa Alexander has presented, Fran Shore has presented, and many, many others. So I feel I'm in distinguished company being here, and I'm excited to talk about this topic because I think it's so timely. President Barack Obama and the Black Panther Party. This is President Obama's last year in office. We're in the last few months, not the final days. So even though a lot has been written about President Obama, the Obama administration, there's more to come. And so I am excited that we're going to have time to reflect on the meaning and impact of the Obama presidency on Black America, on the United States, and on the world. But this topic is timely because this year is the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party in Oakland, California, 1966. The Black Panther Party was one of the most prominent Black political groups of the 20th century, and really in American and African American history. So the party was significant. It posed a revolutionary challenge to the status quo here in the United States. And so that's kind of the contrast I'm going to be drawing throughout the talk. President Obama, the status and symbol of American politics, American government, and the Black Panther Party, this challenger, this major critic of American politics and government. I always learn more through dialogue, so I want to speak briefly and hope that our question and answer period can really be engaging. Let me begin with three perspectives, three Black perspectives on President Obama. The first one we can call a pro-Obama perspective from mainly Black liberal Democrats. This is what we're talking about, people like Melissa Harris Perry, Michael Eric Dyson. These are some of our towering intellects, towering scholars who, to me, were most persuasive in defending and supporting the Obama administration during the campaigns and during his 2 terms. Their argument was that we shouldn't underestimate the symbolic importance of the Obama administration, of President Obama and the Obama administration and the Obama family. And I think there's something to that. I think something can't be denied about that. President Obama was the first African American president, one of 44, and his personal biography is so interesting and inspiring. Obviously, he was an excellent student, undergrad and law school. But instead of going the corporate route, which would have been relatively easy money for him, he decided to go another way, working as a community organizer, civil rights lawyer, law professor, and then elected official. That's the profile of a man interested in public service, dedicated to his people. And so his supporters highlighted that, and I think rightly so. When people began to question, why isn't President Obama doing more for the communities that he served in Chicago, and for poor people in general, and for black people in general? The response of these supporters, his first perspective was that he's doing the best he can under very, very difficult circumstances, unprecedented hostility, much of which was racist. And so they said he's not doing everything we want him to do, but he's doing the best he can under the circumstances, and we kind of should make peace with that and defend our president. I would put Reverend Al Sharpton in this category, who was among several people who attacked other African Americans and other critics of President Obama. We said, wait a minute, we don't have time for that criticism. Now is not the time. We're in an unprecedented situation, hostile environment, man trying to do important things. But that leads us to the second perspective, the second black perspective, which I would argue also comes from mainly black liberal Democrats. These are people who say, love President Obama, love the Obama family. It's so important that we have that beautiful symbolism, inspiring us all, inspiring the nation, inspiring the world. But this perspective argued that there was something called the traditional black political agenda, and it tended to be more liberal and progressive, and it had a lot of things like promoting racial equality, full employment, attacking racial discrimination, attacking police brutality, attacking mass incarceration. And this was an agenda developed by black political leaders, black activists, black government officials, Congressional Black Caucus, and the major groups. People in this category would be people like Cornel West, who was initially a big supporter of President Obama. People like political science professor Fred Harris at Columbia University, who wrote an important book, I recommend it to you all, called The Price of the Ticket. And he argues that candidate and President Obama developed a race-neutral style of campaigning and governing that systematically minimized the issues most important to black people, especially black working class and poor people. And that's a problem. We love President Obama. We want him to succeed. But what about these policies and perspectives that were near consensus in mainstream black America that Obama isn't speaking to? And my friend Fred Harris was particularly critical of President Obama's response when reporters, journalists, politicians, and other scholars were asking, President Obama, what about the concerns of the black community? What about these issues that you supported in the past? President Obama's response was often, I'm not the president of only black people. I'm not the president of black America. I'm the president of everybody. And Professor Harris and others interpreted that as a way to shut down debate in the black community, to shut down advocacy for these progressive public policies that President Obama supported in the past to kind of close down debate. And only in situations of crisis, like his friend Skip Gates being arrested in his own home, would President Obama have to give an eloquent speech on how we haven't overcome racism in America. But it seemed that President Obama really didn't want to deal with the racial question directly and fully. And related to that, he didn't want to deal with the question of class or the question of poverty, the question of inequality. And so these supporters got a little frustrated. And Cornel West, again, is the example here. He got so frustrated that he abandoned ship and became one of President Obama's most severe critics. And that leads me to the third perspective, which I call a black leftist perspective, a perspective I'm more sympathetic to. And it argues that President Obama has, unfortunately, become the representative of mainstream American politics and the mainstream presidency, using his slogans of hope and change and all those other beautiful words that inspired so many people as kind of window dressing for a kind of traditional presidency, traditional policies, neoliberal policies, supporting Wall Street over Main Street. And so these black leftists have gotten louder over the 8 years of the Obama presidency, and I'm talking about people again like Cornel West, the online journal, Black Agenda Report, my friend Jared Ball's website, I Mix What I Like. These have been some hard-hitting critiques of President Obama. And for me, they're especially timely, because if we link domestic issues, national issues, to the international realm, then we've got a very complicated situation. The United States, as Fran Shore likes to point out, has over 800 military bases all over the world. Those bases are often the launching pad for military interventions, the overthrow of governments, the assassination of leaders. This is what President Obama is leading now. He's administering this global empire. President Obama walks around with a kill list in his pocket. My wife didn't believe me when I told her that. It's in the news, it's public knowledge. He's assassinating people. He's droning people. Many innocent men, women, and children are being killed as we speak, and have been killed over the last 8 years by President Obama, our beloved President Obama. This is what this black leftist critique is highlighting. We can't ignore this. We shouldn't be quiet about this. We should talk about this and come to grips with it. I've talked to some of my friends and colleagues in the first two kind of pro-Obama and asked them about this. What's going on here? And I must admit, I've been disappointed that many of them have embraced the notion of, what do they call it, humanitarian interventionism, liberal humanitarianism. We're killing them, we're invading them, we're occupying them, we're droning them for their own good, to prevent a greater bad of ISIS or ISIL, global terrorism. That's what we're fighting. And that's what we have to do. And we're doing. And so President Obama, because of his style and eloquence and just presentation as whole, has been very effective in defending these policies. And I find it very disturbing. He said, you don't think I'm tough on terrorism or in international relations? What was his response? Ask Osama bin Laden about that. So this is some serious stuff that I think is not good for the country, is not good for the presidency. Let me link this to the Black Panther Party. And I want to highlight two perspectives here. I've done research on the Black Panther Party. I've published research on the Black Panther Party. I know Black Panther Party members. I talked to them about President Obama. And to my surprise, they were among his most enthusiastic supporters. I was like, you know he's not going to support what you represented 40 years ago, right? They're like, no, you gotta vote for him. You gotta support President Obama. And I saw this disconnect, but I was surprised that many of the Black Panthers that I spoke to, who I had interviewed years earlier, were pro-Obama. And sent me those, I'm not a big social media person, but they sent me those, what do you call them, emojis and others, threatening me that if I didn't vote for Obama, I was going to be eaten up or something bad was going to happen to me. I was like, what is this? But this is how serious it got. But I think it's emblematic of the fact that with the demise of the Black Panther Party, a result of internal and external factors, especially external government repression, many of the leaders of the Black Panther Party drifted into Democratic Party politics. The most relevant to our discussion here is Bobby Rush, who was Deputy Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party in the city of Chicago, friend of Fred Hampton, the assassinated leader of the party in Chicago, and the only man to defeat Barack Obama in an electoral campaign. I know you will remember, young candidate Obama ran to be federal representative in the city of Chicago in the district that Bobby Rush had represented for years. And candidate Obama lost that election. As far as I know, it's the only election that he has lost for public office. And not only did he lose, but he lost badly. And he was hurt personally. I don't know if you remember this, Lisa A.
Oh, I remember the campaign, and me and Bobby Rush have some issues on how that went down.
From Chicago. Bobby Rush said, Obama's not like us. He's not black enough. He got this Harvard education and he wants to come back to the hood and tell us how to live and tell us how to be. But he's not one of us. And Obama was hurt by that because identity issues are very important for him, having a white mother, growing up in Hawaii, living abroad, and not growing up in the traditional black community like Southside Chicago. And so, as a result of this, I think he decided that he would never be accused of not being authentically black again. And many people have noted his facility in speaking to different black audiences at the grassroots, rec centers, community centers, black churches, professional associations, corporate. President Obama has political skills. That's not in doubt. But following that defeat by Bobby Rush, that electoral defeat, President Obama dreamed bigger. And so, while he made sure his racial authenticity was intact, he advanced the argument that is very appealing to African Americans and Americans in general. And I believe he gave it in a speech in the 2004 Democratic National Convention. And it goes something like, there is no black America. There is no white America. There is no Latino America. There is no Asian America. There's just the United States of America. And so that was kind of the first national exposure that Obama had, pushing a line that is theoretically racially transcendent, that we can transcend race. We can go beyond race. We can get beyond this conflict, this animosity, this hostility that seems so embedded in our communities, in our families, in our nation. And I think that was very appealing, but I think one of its consequences as it was manifested by Obama was this de-emphasis on issues that have historically been important to the African American community, domestically and internationally. Let me conclude by talking about the 2016 presidential election. I believe that Hillary Clinton is going to win the election. I think Trump is an embarrassment to the country. I will likely vote for the Green Party presidential candidate, Jill Stein, because I think the Green Party's program is most consistent with the best political traditions, the best radical political traditions in the black community. President Obama still has very high public opinion ratings, public approval. I think Hillary Clinton represents the continuity of the Obama administration in the best way and in the worst way. Many people point to healthcare under President Obama, that was his main domestic achievement, that he fought for it, he committed to it. I think he does believe in social inclusion at some level. I think Hillary does as well. But on the negative side, I think Hillary may even be more warlike, more militarist, more imperialist than President Obama, and I don't think that's a good thing for the world. And if we bring it back to the Black Panther Party, and I have here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a recent comprehensive history of the Black Panther Party, I think the best ideals and ideas from the Black Panther Party had to do with not only freedom, justice, and equality, but peace internationally, non-intervention, rejecting empire as a way of life. Unfortunately, I think many Americans, including African Americans, believe that we have a right to have 1,000 military bases all over the world. And that if we feel threatened, we have the right, if we feel threatened, not that after we have been attacked, but if we feel threatened, we have a right to take the threat out lethally, permanently. But that's not good for the world because we don't give that right to any other country. And if we did, it wouldn't be good for the world because we would have even more conflict, even more war, even more violence than we have now. And so, later this month, I'm going to the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party conference. It's in Oakland, California. And I expect many of these issues to be debated because, unfortunately, many of the issues that the Black Panther Party became identified with, many of the signature issues that the Black Panther Party highlighted and defended, no to police brutality, no to racism, no to the Vietnam War, education, healthcare, housing, all of those issues identified in the 10-point platform or program are live issues now. They have not been resolved. And in many ways have gotten worse. Some of the economists and sociologists tell us that inequality is increasing in America. Richest country, most powerful country in the history of humanity is growing in many ways more polarized, more unequal, and more lethal and deadly. And so I personally believe that we need a change. And I believe that looking to African American history and politics can help guide us onto a better path. So let me end here and engage in some dialogue. Thank you so much.
Questions? Comments?
What was your first point? I missed it. I'm sorry. I came in when you first began.
Right. No, I just said I just highlighted 3 black perspectives on President Obama.
The first one.
The first one was a pro-Obama perspective, arguing that he is so important symbolically in terms of first black president, beautiful black family in the White House, just representative of the best that we can be if we do the right thing, we study hard, we work hard.
American dream.
This is what we can achieve. And some of the defenders of Obama in that sense, not only in that sense, but in that sense were Melissa Harris Perry, who had a TV show for several years, Michael Eric Dyson, who was on TV and radio frequently, Reverend Al, Steve Harvey, radio, and many others. So I see their defense as more symbolic because on substance, President Obama often pursued policies that they themselves had criticized in earlier lives or earlier years. Because many of these people, Melissa Harris Parrott, Michael Eric Dyson, Ronald Trump, Al Sharpton, they consider themselves on the progressive side of the Democratic Party, on the social democratic side of the Democratic Party. But President Obama didn't pursue kind of those progressive social democratic policies. But they defended him anyway and were strong and articulate in their defense. And that second perspective were a similar set of black politicians, activists, leaders, a much smaller segment, but they were critical. They were more critical. They said, President Obama is abandoning some of our traditional issues here, and that's not a good thing.
He was appealing to them.
We need to call him on that. And that third perspective is a more radical, revolutionary perspective that I'm more sympathetic to, yes.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate your perspective, and though I do have some comments first and then a question. I won't take a lot of time. The comment is I appreciate your courage in identifying where you stand and the perspectives that you gave us. But first of all, I think I want to say that I do not believe that the Green Party is going to win the election, nor will the Libertarian Party win the election. So hold on. So in relation to that, I guess my question is, what do the rest of us do if we really want our voices to be heard? And as people have said, well, if you vote for those two, you're throwing away your vote. Maybe you will or maybe you won't, but I don't think you're going to be heard in a larger national debate. So the question really is, what would you have had Obama do as the first African American president to make a change in our country or to have an impact?
Well, thank you for the first question, comment. I mean, I would have been happier had Obama followed the advice of that second category or that second perspective, which is to say, embrace some of the traditional progressive policies of the Black Caucus, the Black Congressional Caucus, for example. These are all anti-poverty perspectives. These are strengthening the social safety net perspective, investing more in education, less in military. I would have been happier. I wouldn't have been satisfied, but I think that was possible, and I think President Obama decided not to go down that way. Some people say if he had gone that way, he wouldn't have been elected. He couldn't have been elected. But given his skill and talent, which no one questions, as a politician, I think he could have made that more progressive case. And so I think he should have done that. But if he really wanted to be true to his soul, see, because Obama has read Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, all the icons of black struggle.
Black Marcus Garvey.
And black leadership. So he knows that there are different options out there that have emerged from the black community. But I think he just decided in terms of political practicality and political feasibility to narrow his focus, do what needs to be done to get elected, every now and then play rhetorical, service to Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, at the end of his life, considered himself a revolutionary, was calling himself a radical revolutionary, was advocating a revolution in values and behavior and institutions. And so I would have preferred that Obama follow that Martin Luther King Jr. But he decided for a more pragmatic approach, and he's been successful, we cannot deny that. Any president that's reelected, leaving off with high approval rating, has been successful. But I just don't think the country's in a good place. And I think we're going to have some problems in the future. Yes?
I would suggest that there's validity in all three of the perspectives. And when faced with that, any of us who have, a tough choice to make, People give you 3 paths to go down. You got to pick one. To try to straddle them, you don't get very far down any path. I share the frustration that from the time I was 18, I've had to vote for the lesser of evils. And perhaps that's a result of our democratic process, perhaps that's, you just got to pick one. And by the time it gets down to the time to pick, you got 2, or in this case 4, okay? So, as a black person, which will do the least damage is what you end up with, as opposed to who's the one I'm cheering for. Now, truly, in 2000, when he ran for president, first time, I finally felt like, I got a good choice here. Now, was I looking for the black savior? Perspective 1, impractical. You would be assassinated, I felt like. I think a lot of us were afraid on election night. Okay, they're gonna kill him if he goes out there too far. So I want him to go out there too far. I feel that in my community over here on the west side of Detroit, formerly on the south side of Chicago, yeah, we need certain things, but is the president the one that delivers that? So I remain frustrated. I understand all 3 perspectives, and I share to a great extent all 3 perspectives. So when we have to pick one, though, we're in a circumstance now where the choice, for me, is really clear. Of, okay, who don't we want to win? And therefore, we got to vote for who we want to win. And then we'll kind of sort it all out later. So I don't know if there's a question in there, but that's my response to your eloquent talk.
Well, let me just say, I share your frustration and internal conflict, and I also believe there are good, solid points in all 3 perspectives. And obviously, my position is not the most popular position in the black community. And I think my family has been looking at me funny for years now. My wife has tolerated me for years now. But I know it's an unpopular position, but I think it's a defensible position. And I just emphasize that I'm not happy with the status quo. And I think we as a system, as a structure, set of institutions, we've got to deal with that. And 2 major parties, they take that for granted. That's the assumption. We don't even get to talk about this history of intervention, empire, assassination, American exceptionalism. That's just de facto. I think that's a problem for us all. Yes. You have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you two. I think that President Obama has done an excellent job considering where the country was when he came into office. And that train of thought, I think, where he had to come in and make these changes for African Americans, I don't think is very smart. Because, first of all, what he had to do was make sure that he gets to fill that Supreme Court bench as long as he possibly can. I don't think anything's more important than that. So he needs to make sure not only is he elected the first time, that he's elected the second time. And then he had a lot of problems to deal with in terms of the economy and so forth. And I also believe he wouldn't have been very safe had he done some of the things that African Americans wanted him to do. I think he's highly intelligent and plays a good game of chess. And I think, let's see what he does after he's not president in terms of some of these issues and policies that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
This has been.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
So I agree with your standpoint, though I'm questioning a little bit of the verb usage. So you said that Obama chose basically the path of least resistance. And my thought is, it's not so much that I think Obama chose it, is that so many people were in the first camp of being excited about, hey, first black president, that we forgot to hold his feet to the fire once he was in office because of all the brushback he was already getting from the racism on the right. And if we had come out in droves and said, hey, this is what we want as a community, much like the LGBTQ community held his feet to the fire while he was in office, and look at the strides that were made. If we had done that, we might have gotten a slightly more progressive president than we ended up with.
Well, I agree
And
with that.
he even said that. He was like, hey, we're president of the United States, you want me to do something, make me do it. And we didn't do that.
I think we should have done that. We, the people, and leadership as well. But that doesn't mean that he also shouldn't have done the right thing. Because I think in his heart of heart, he really is sympathetic to that more progressive, social democratic view.
He was waiting for us to push him there, and we never did.
I think the one thing we have to do is consider the fact that he never would have been, most likely might not have been elected had we focused on the fact that African Americans only comprise 12% or roughly maybe more, a tiny bit more of the population. And also, even with the Latino vote, it still wouldn't have been comparable enough people for him to, if he had just appealed mainly to the underclass, so to speak, he wouldn't have had enough numbers in order to be elected. And his first order of business, his priority was to get himself into office, not just to be the savior of the black race and savior of the downtrodden, but I mean to try and get himself in office, to put himself in position, like the lady said, to help with the Supreme Court and also to do what he could, in any way. But I mean, I'm just saying, when you think about the fact that it was all about the numbers, basically, in order for him to try and appeal to a wider sector, not just the fact that he was trying to be partly non-black, you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
I wonder if these disputes aren't disputes mostly about means and not ends. The three camps you delineated probably share what's the desirable outcomes, but they disagree about how to get there. And that dispute has actually come up here, I think. And as an example about maybe the best means were the ones that Obama took, might be exemplified in the Affordable Care Act. If he'd come out and said, there are a lot of black people who are poor and they don't have any medical care and this is an injustice and so forth, I bet that would have sunk the Affordable Care Act. And it's the same kind of thing in foreign policy, I think. It's true that we disapprove of interventions in certain ways, but there seem to be cases and cases that some country is involved or a group in the country is involved in genocide. That seems like a really good reason to intervene. And if there's some other reason, just for, I don't know, who we like to have in power or something, that's not a good reason to intervene. But if there actually is a good reason to intervene, I think sometimes you have to pick the lesser of evil. And it's like a case where you have a plane that's out of control and you can either deflect it and hit the less populated area or let it continue and it's going to kill a bunch of innocent people if you don't do anything. It's those kinds of choices, unfortunately, you face when you're trying to implement foreign policy.
Everybody has great questions and comments. I appreciate them. Brent?
Thanks, Ollie, for your presentation. I have a question, but I wanted to respond to what was just raised, if I may. I think the last point you made about foreign policy, everybody recognized universally there was genocide in Rwanda. The United States didn't do anything, essentially. The body that should have been there and played a really equivocal role was the United Nations. When the United States went into the Balkans, it used its weaponry, which the kind of weaponry like depleted uranium, which is a violation of international law. The U.S. tends to, when it intervenes in ways that only worsen the situation from my perspective, and there are international bodies that it could work through and strengthen instead of eroding. So that's just one point. Secondly, on the Affordable Health Care Act, it would have been easy to, with the Democrats in power in the Congress, it would have been easy to support a public option. Obama didn't do that. It would have been easy to put a cap on Big Pharma. He didn't do that because he made his alliances with Big Pharma, alliances that corporate Democrats have been making for a long time. Okay, so sorry, got that ran off my. But now I want to ask the question. One of the strands I think that was really important at the very beginning. I was a big Obama supporter, and in 2008, and there was a turning point that made me a little uneasy, and that was his throwing Reverend Jeremiah Wright under the bus. He wrote his most eloquent statement in defense of Reverend Wright. The best statement, you should go back and look at that statement on race and racial oppression. It's a beautiful statement. But in the process, he began moving away from black liberation theology. That was the foundation for what Reverend Wright was talking about. And it was interesting because I went to the NAACP, you may have remembered that year, I think it was 2008, NAACP dinner had Reverend Wright as its speaker. And that was already after, right? Reverend Wright had been sort of separated from Obama. So I'm wondering, Ali, about that tension that was there from the very beginning of here was somebody who, as you pointed out, wanted to make sure that the Bobby Rush critique, that he wasn't black enough, meant that he could be that part of that church, that important church in Chicago, and part of that tradition of black liberation theology. But then to be the politician that Jeremiah Wright talked about, he had to go a different route. Do you see some of those tensions early on and ways in which the Black Panther Party was also reflective of that?
Yeah, I saw those tensions, and I guess I was always skeptical of candidate Obama, even though as a political scientist I could always appreciate his talent and skill as an activist, candidate, and a politician. But I kind of felt that his political ambition, see, it's dangerous when you combine talent and ambition. And he has both. And so I early on I got the sense that he was willing to make tough decisions, including throwing his former pastor under the bus and doing other things, cutting off, people, friends, family, and former allies if he had to achieve his political goal. And I think at some level you have to be like that in politics, but I just thought there was a better choice at the time. I think I voted for Cynthia McKinney, also the Green Party candidate, and my family would get mad at me. I would say, I'm voting for the black woman in the race.
I have a response to, other people have questions, but I have a response. I think I should get a response. My response is, it's no argument against my view that says that sometimes the U.S. has not done what they should, and sometimes have done what they shouldn't. My general point was, there are some cases in the world, in some circumstances, where it calls for intervention, and often that intervention has evil consequences associated with it that you cannot avoid. Everything you said to me, is compatible with that point. About Obamacare, yes, it's true, I was for the public option myself. I think at that time Obama was optimistic that, gee, if I give a little ground here, maybe I can get the Republicans, to give a little ground there later. So he was looking ahead. It was a mistake, but it was an understandable mistake.
But I think he did that on a number of issues, and I was disappointed in that because I think he seemed to be kind of pre-negotiating against himself.
He was deceived by his own rhetoric.
Not understanding that the Republicans.
After a while,
You're pulling, really.
After a while, you
He
took
just
that
never
time,
got the
yeah.
memo.
That's a great point.
And also to your point about genocide, I think it is accepted internationally and legally for countries to be able to intervene to stop genocide. And obviously, I support that kind of intervention. But the problem is that when the United States commits genocide, it refuses to call it genocide, and it refuses to suffer any sanctions for the genocide. And so, for example, I was a little boy during the Vietnam War. But, you know, my father was in the military, my godfather, all my uncles. I think 2-3 million Vietnamese people were killed. That's a lot of people who didn't represent any threat to the United States of America. Individually, collectively, symbolically. Those people are gone. Millions maimed today, suffering from what do you call it, chemical biological,
Agent Orange.
WMD. Obviously, you got veterans suffering in the United States, but imagine there where all the bombs were dropped, where all the contaminants were spilled, no accountability. Nobody, no, that's a problem. Same thing with the Iraq War. That was in my youth, and now my adult, the Iraq War. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of innocent people killed, maimed.
It doesn't follow from the fact that B and C actions are criticizable, that action A is criticizable. You're pointing out there are B and C's, there are plenty of them. I'm with you. There's A, we're talking about A actions. What about those?
No, I agree with the A action, but I guess my problem is more systemic. We have a problem with the international system and its undemocratic nature, that the major power can commit crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and not be held accountable. But it wants to hold weaker, smaller powers. And people have noted, why are all the African dictators and leaders taken to the criminal court? Because they can be.
Yeah.
But nobody can take
I was
United
impressed
States,
in your
Russia.
point about the kill list. I was just saying, well, maybe using drones in certain circumstances is permissible. It was just a narrow point. So
Oh, I
everything
see.
else I grant you.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. That was your criticism of
But
Obama.
do you support the use of drones to kill people? The top terror?
If it's done judiciously and carefully and it tries to minimize the number of innocents killed, yes.
I hear you, but I guess I would disagree, because it just seems like the drones are kind of by nature, the president is acting as judge, jury, executioner. And that even though some people on that list are bad people, we don't want them to be around to commit crimes, but they're inevitably innocent civilians killed. Yes.
So do you think that a person of any race, either or any gender, because I guess there's more than two genders now, could be elected president of the United States in the near future with campaigning on and with a track record of the kind of progressive beliefs and policies of, say, the Black Panther Party?
Yes.
Who's voting for them? Who's voting for them?
Well, let me contextualize that statement. I think we have a very corrupt political system. I hesitate to call it democratic because of the authoritarian origins of the system. Money plays a big part. So I was just going to say, how could Jill Stein get elected? How could a progressive third-party candidate? If it's not going to happen, but if Mark Zuckerberg and some of the other young billionaires who do have a social heart, who do want to do good, deciding we're going to make this happen, the Dan Gilberts of the world, we're going to make this happen. Because you remember, the example is Ross Perot.
He didn't win.
But he got 20% of the vote.
But he didn't come close to winning.
No, because the system is stacked against.
Exactly my point.
No, so let me try to super. Wait, we need a system.
And I'm not even saying, I like the idea of throwing away your vote. I'm not sure that I agree with that, because I believe that everybody has a right to like, right, you can be judgmental of other people and how they decide to vote. You have a right to support the candidate that supports your values, and I don't think that's throwing away your vote. I think
Right.
that's standing in your principles. That's my personal opinion. But my question is more about just electability, considering who the voters are in this country. And so is the kind of change, systemic change, institutional change that will deconstruct racism gonna come from presidential electoral politics? Or is it gonna come from a grassroots revolution? That's my question.
It's gonna come from both. I don't see those as mutually exclusive. It's not an either or situation. Black Panther Party, at its peak, 68 to 71, kind of had a revolutionary discourse, but they had a lot of popularity because they were doing programs in the black community. They had white allies. They had some rich white supporters. So alliances would have to be built. You'd have to find dynamic leaders. I think it's a combination of things, but I think the system has to change to make some of the progress that we need.
I think there is a scenario, and it's scary. Imagine what happened with the Republican Party and Trump, which was a revolt against the Republican Party by Republican voters, taking place on the Democratic side.
It did, Bernie Sanders.
We almost got there.
Yeah.
And I took a lot of backlash from my traditionally black voting friends, being a staunch Sanders supporter. But I think that's how it could happen. But it would need to be a revolution of sorts, and I agree with you, both grassroots and higher educated folk or folks with money who are of good heart and mind, or whatever that looks like. And I don't know if it could happen because I think that traditional democratic politics provide good rhetoric that soothe you into, okay, I'm better than they are, vote for me. And I see that's kind of what's going on right now. But I think it's possible. I don't know if I'll see it, but I never thought I'd see a black president.
But the congressional system also has to be taken into account.
Yeah.
The president can't do it, and Obama thought he could do something, and he obviously has had significant problems. So we do have a congressional system, and everybody would have to be overturned for that unification that we want. So, I mean, I think it's kind of the sky, we
Yeah,
work, but it
yeah.
doesn't mean they're gonna
It
get
has
it
to be
like that.
overturned in a census year.
Yes.
So gerrymandering is part of the problem.
Yes, absolutely.
I think we're running out of time. Last few comments? Questions?
I agree with your the general thrust of your analysis. The one thing that I missed is that you seem to be individualizing Obama. The fact is that all the positions that Obama has represented, and indeed the ones, the three critical standpoints, perspectives, are all embedded in historical black politics. These are all tendencies, we've had an incredible range in terms of the historical manifestations of black ideological and political consciousness. So it's possible to situate them variously. The one thing, however, coming from my own African experience of the huge divergence between rhetoric and political reality, is that none of these positions have been tested or put to the feet of actual political power. So what I'm saying is that this is the first time black people are confronting the extremely complicated realities of American systemic and political power. And part of it can be explained, obviously, in terms of Obama's own proclivities. I mean, he went through quite a trajectory. And my own perception was that he was completely deceived by or captured by his own, non-racial or non-racialized rhetoric. He wasted 2 or 3 of his first most politically productive years pandering to this whole notion of a color-free America. by completely misreading the Republicans. I mean, this thing with the Obamacare was totally disgraceful. I mean, the New York Times, for goodness sake, wrote a whole series of editorials right from the very beginning saying, look, Obama, this is the most crucial part of your agenda, and you have abandoned it to whom? The Congress. He, instead of actually exercising leadership in this complicated and politically contested terrain, what did he do? He said, well, let's give it, and you're quite right in saying that he gave it to the Republicans and lost very serious ground, including right from the beginning just abandoning that single payer option. I grew up in Canada, I'm a Canadian citizen, and it has its problems, but it works marvelously well in terms of attending to the poor, the vulnerable, those who are not able to offer or afford, expensive insurance and so on. So I think we need to, first of all, situate Obama himself in terms of really the contestations endemic within the historical black political consciousness, which remains unresolved. And it's interesting that that's why I thought it was provocative that you're actually playing off Obama against the Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party underwent its own ideological trajectory, as you know. A lot of it was never resolved.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure what the lessons are. I was here basically to listen.
But let me end by saying that we didn't talk about it, but obviously Obama was tremendously popular internationally, is tremendously popular internationally, especially among black communities, black populations. And I have to say, I've been criticized abroad for criticizing Obama by black people who recognize the importance of the symbolic first black president, most powerful country in the world. They did not want me criticizing Obama, even though I thought I had good points of substance. And so, thank you again for coming out. I really appreciate it, and hopefully, thank you, Walt.